At my mom's 60th birthday, I walked in with my kids and she said, "You brought your shame with you again?" My brother laughed. "At least tell them not to touch anything." My aunt tossed a napkin at my daughter and said, "She's going to stain the furniture." I stood up, took my kids' hands and said, "Let's find warmth somewhere else." A week later, they discovered the shock. Now they're chasing me, begging. I never imagined my mother's 60th birthday would be the day that changed everything. I'd been dreading it for weeks. Not because I didn't care, but because I already knew how it would go. I told Rachel, my wife, that we should skip it this year. Maybe just send flowers and a card. But she looked at me like I was giving up. She still believed in things like family redemption. I guess I did too, somewhere deep down. But it had been buried under too many years of being treated like an outsider in my own bloodline. We arrived at my mother's house just after 3. The sky was that dull gray that makes everything feel heavier than it is. Ava had fallen asleep in the back seat with her tablet still glowing. Josh was whining about being hungry. Rachel leaned over and asked me if I was okay. I lied. I carried the presents in. Nothing flashy, just thoughtful things. A custom mug with the grandkids' photos, a handmade blanket Rachel had spent 2 weeks knitting, and a book my mom used to read to us as kids. I had this faint, stupid hope that maybe she'd smile, maybe even thank me. The moment we stepped into the living room, it vanished. "You brought your disgrace again." The sentence hit like a slap. Ava looked up at me, confused. Josh stayed close to Rachel, silent. My mom hadn't changed one bit. Same sharp voice, same coldness. Like everything I did was a personal inconvenience to her. My brother David let out this obnoxious laugh from the couch where he was half reclined like a king in sweatpants. "At least tell them not to touch anything," he added. I could see the little curl of amusement at the corner of his mouth, like he'd been waiting for the chance to say it. Then Celia, always the loyal shadow behind my mother, picked up a napkin from the coffee table and tossed it at Ava like she was shooing off a pet. "She'll get the furniture dirty." No one flinched. No one thought this was wrong. To them, it was just another episode of the family hierarchy. I was the one who left, the one who didn't beg for approval, the one who didn't bow. And for that, they never forgave me. I stood there staring at them, the 3 of them, so proud and smug, like they were doing the world a favor just by existing. And in that moment, something snapped. Not with rage, not with tears, with clarity. I didn't make a scene. I didn't raise my voice. I just said to my kids, "Let's find somewhere else to warm up." Ava took my hand without hesitation. Josh followed, looking back once. Rachel didn't ask what I was doing. She already knew. We walked out together. No one tried to stop us. Not one person. That night, we booked a cheap but cozy hotel suite near the edge of town. The kids took turns picking movies. We ordered greasy burgers and fries. And for the first time that day, we laughed. I didn't hear from any of them all week until Friday. That's when they found out and everything changed. Calls came in back to back. First my mother, then David, then Celia, all suddenly remembering how to use a phone. Then came the emails. Even my cousin Lauren sent a message pretending she had just missed us at the party. They acted confused, concerned, like they didn't understand why I was upset. But I knew what it was really about because now they knew the truth. And now they were terrified. The truth they discovered wasn't some buried secret or scandal. It was something they chose to pretend didn't exist. Even though it had been right in front of them for years, I was the one keeping the family business from falling apart. Quietly, without applause, without even a thank you. My name didn't appear on the front page of the annual reports, but I was the reason the lights stayed on and the checks didn't bounce. 8 years ago, they were drowning. My mother had no idea how to manage the company after Dad passed. David had the title of managing director, but spent most of his time golfing and posting inspirational quotes online. Aunt Celia was supposed to handle outreach and PR, but her version of networking was sipping white wine and name-dropping people she met once at a fundraiser. They didn't notice the business bleeding out until Uncle Ray called me one night. He'd stayed on as a silent partner after retiring just to keep an eye on things. He didn't ask me for help. He just laid out the numbers. I didn't owe them anything, But I knew if the company collapsed, all the employees would be collateral damage, people who had nothing to do with my mother's ego or my brother's laziness. So I stepped in. I created a holding company in Oregon, rerouted the financing structure, and started issuing low-interest loans to keep the business afloat. Eventually, I ended up with 63% control. On paper, the company was still run by my mother. David still walked around like a king. Celia still bragged about the family legacy, but none of them ever asked where the sudden stability came from. They just assumed the universe finally remembered they were special. And I let them believe it until the birthday. I didn't say a word about the company that day. I didn't throw it in their faces when they insulted my kids. I just walked out. But Uncle Ray must have decided enough was enough. I'm almost certain he told them not just that I'd save them, but that I owned the majority stake. And then came the calls. I ignored the first few. Then I turned off my phone altogether. Rachel showed me the group messages they sent her instead. A nauseating mix of fake concern and guilt-coded manipulation. We didn't mean it that way. Don't let a misunderstanding tear us apart. She's just upset. You know how your mother is. The kids need their grandparents. Not once did they say sorry. They weren't trying to fix anything. They were scared because this time I had something they wanted. Something they needed. Money. They were planning a massive Europe trip. The kind of pretentious photo op vacation they used to mock people for. 2 weeks on the Rhine River. Luxury cruise cabins. Private chefs. Shopping in Paris. Castles in Germany. They had been planning it for months. Bragging to everyone. They even made matching t-shirts for the airport. It all unraveled in 3 days. The business accounts were frozen. I didn't even have to explain myself. I just paused the automated funding and sent one email to the finance manager saying we'd be reviewing current allocations. Within 48 hours, the travel agency canceled their entire itinerary. I didn't even flinch. Lauren, my cousin, called to catch up and mentioned how the travel funds were suddenly unavailable. She was fishing. I didn't bite. By Sunday, the niceties stopped. David sent a message loaded with cheap legal threats and passive-aggressive barbs. He even copied a fake attorney's name at the bottom. Celia left a 2-minute voicemail crying about how I was destroying everything our family built. My mother sent a photo of some crumpled letter I wrote her when I was 13. She captioned it, "Before you turned cold, Rachel saw all of it. She didn't even blink. She just looked at me and said, I think it's time they finally felt what it's like to lose something." That was the moment everything turned. We decided we weren't going to just defend ourselves. We were going to end the whole game. It was never supposed to go this far. When Rachel and I walked out of that birthday party, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I just wanted to protect my kids. But they wouldn't let it go. My mother, David, Celia, they all kept coming like I'd stolen something from them when in reality, I just stopped giving. I told Rachel we'd wait it out. Let the dust settle. She said that wasn't how this family worked. She was right. So I did what I should have done years ago. I called Uncle Ray and the company's CFO, Donna, and asked for a full review. We met in my office, not a conference room, my office. Because this time I wasn't going to pretend I was just an outside investor. I asked for every financial detail from the last 12 months. Payroll, vendor contracts, expansion plans, marketing expenses, and there it was in black and white. All the inflated spending, the vanity hires, the consultant fees that led nowhere. They were draining the company dry like it was their private trust fund. Without my capital, they wouldn't last through fall. That's when I told Ree I was taking full control. He didn't argue. In fact, he looked relieved. He said he'd back me. Donna nodded. We'd all watched them make a mess of the company while pretending they were building a legacy. That illusion was done. The next day, I drafted an internal memo and a formal notice for the executive team. No emotion, no finger-pointing, just a shift in structure. I also sent a very specific email to my mother, David, and Celia. Subject line transition notice. I will no longer be financing the current leadership structure of the company. As the majority stakeholder, I am assuming executive oversight effective immediately. Any decisions moving forward will be approved through the new governance model. Please direct all communications to legal. Do not contact me or my family again. Less than 20 minutes later, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. David texted first. This is war. Then came Celia, who left me a voice message full of dramatic gasps and half-sea-cried phrases about what your father would have wanted. And then my mother sent one line. You've killed your family. They didn't care about the business. They cared about being seen as powerful, important, untouchable, and now all of that was gone. But they weren't going to accept it. That night, we started seeing strange cars parked outside our house. One of our neighbors said someone had been asking questions about our schedules. Rachel got followed home twice. At Ava's school, a woman claiming to be a family friend tried to pick her up early. She gave a fake name, but the office recognized her from the pictures I'd shown them just a week earlier. That's when Rachel said it had to stop. Not with polite boundaries, not with legal notices, with a fire they'd never forget. She had a plan. First, I thought she was joking. It sounded too outrageous, too public, too irreversible. But then she looked at me and said, "They want drama. Let's give them a front row seat." We talked for hours that night, went over the risks, what we'd lose, what we'd gain. And then she did it. The next morning, Rachel walked into their favorite country club, the one where my mother and Celia still hosted their ridiculous charity brunches, and she made sure everyone heard what she had to say. What she revealed was devastating. And it wasn't just words. It came with evidence, documents, photos, bank statements, every dirty secret they thought no one knew. By the time she left, half the room had gone silent and the rest were whispering. Rachel didn't look back. That afternoon, the call stopped. The silence afterward wasn't peaceful. It was eerie, like the air before a storm. For 3 days, not a single call, text, or unexpected car outside our house. I knew it wasn't over. People like my mother don't just disappear. They retreat, reload, and come back worse. But this time, they didn't have ammo. Rachel had burned every bridge they had. What she revealed at the country club wasn't just embarrassing. It was financial and legal suicide. She had been quietly collecting records over the past year, mostly out of habit. Receipts from company dinners. David expense that turned out to be for personal trips, fraudulent vendor contracts that funneled money into a consulting firm and Celia set up in her neighbor's name. Rachel had flagged all of it and saved it in a folder labeled "In Case of Family." She printed copies, brought them to the club, and laid them out on the table mid-brunch right in front of Celia and 2 board members from the country club who also happened to be investors. Then she spoke calm, direct, no shouting. She didn't need to. By the time she walked out, they were radioactive. I found out the full aftermath from Uncle Ray. 2 board members pulled their investment the next day. David tried to claim it was slander, but then Rachel emailed the originals to the board herself. Celia's consulting gig got flagged by the state for tax fraud. My mother tried to hold the family meeting, but no one showed up. Even Lawrence stopped replying to her texts. They were untouchable for years, and now no one would touch them. That might have been the end of it. But then they tried one last card. They started with Ava. She got a birthday card in the mail. No return address, just love, Grandma. Inside was a photo of her and my mom from 3 years ago, and a note that said, "Don't let grown-ups poison your heart. You'll always be mine." Then they emailed Rachel's store under a fake name, leaving 1-star reviews with vague threats in the comments. Someone tried to create a fake Instagram account in Josh's name and followed all his friends. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted control. And when they realized they couldn't have it, they tried to create chaos. That was when I made the final decision. I sent a legal notice through our attorney, a cease and desist to every single one of them, outlining harassment, defamation, and third-party intimidation. We attached screenshots, footage, timestamps, everything. But even more important than the legal part, we went public. I had our attorney send copies of the full document set, Rachel's records, the expense fraud, the school incident, to the company board, the local small business association, and a few of the investors who had backed out. Not to ruin them, but to make sure no one could be fooled again. After that, they vanished for real this time. And Ava, she never opened another letter from them again. She asked me once, "Do I have to love them just because they're family?" I told her no, and I meant it. After the dust settled, There was this strange, echoing quiet around the house. No more phone calls, no more knocks at the door, no more cars parked down the street pretending to be lost. Felt like we'd stepped into a new life. Not perfect, not peaceful, but finally ours. It had taken nearly a year to get to that point. A year of swallowing insults, letting them twist every memory into guilt, every mistake into leverage. And now that it was over, I started seeing things more clearly. The kids were calmer. Rachel was sleeping through the night again. I even noticed the way Ava held herself around strangers, more open, more trusting. When she used to visit my mother's house, she'd come back quiet for days, like she'd learned to make herself smaller. Not anymore. We still saw some family. Not the loud, proud ones, but the ones who'd always kept to the background. My Uncle Ray came over for dinner every few weeks. He brought tools and fixed things around the house like it was his way of apologizing for staying silent too long. My Aunt Deb, not Celia, the other one, baked pies and dropped them off without saying much. Just a smile and a nod. They supported us quietly but completely. But the others, my mother, David, Celia, they were done. The business limped along for a while after I took full control. I restructured half the leadership team, slashed the useless contracts, and got rid of David's made-up executive assistant, who was actually just his high school friend cashing a paycheck. Investors started returning. We refocused the business. It was hard, but it worked. And not once did any of them admit what they did. No apologies, no acknowledgments, just silence. Then one evening, Ava came into the living room holding her tablet. She showed me a video someone had sent her on some school group chat. It was a clip of my mother sitting at a table, maybe at a church event or something, talking about how her son had turned his back on family and how children these days are taught to hate where they come from. It didn't make me angry. It just confirmed what I already knew. They weren't going to stop twisting the story to fit their version. I looked at Ava and asked her if it bothered her. She said, "I don't want to know them anymore." And that was it. We blocked every last number. We warned the schools again. We changed our address on everything. And I made a quiet decision. I would never speak to them again. Not for a funeral, not for an apology, not even for closure. They weren't family anymore. Whatever that word used to mean had died the moment my mother called my children a disgrace. And from that day forward, I didn't carry them with me. Not in anger, not in grief, in nothing. It's been a year now. One full cycle of holidays, birthdays, and ordinary days without a single call, visit, or interruption from them. No apologies ever came. No attempts to sit down and talk it out. Just silence. And honestly, that silence has been the best gift. The business didn't just survive, it got stronger. I hired a new operations manager who actually understood logistics and didn't spend afternoons golfing or napping behind the server room. Rachel helped rebuild the brand's messaging. We moved away from legacy contracts and focused on actual growth. Within 6 months, we landed 2 major accounts we've been chasing for years. Funny what happens when you remove the people who think the world owes them something. Rachel never said, "I told you so," but I could tell she felt the shift, too. We stopped waking up with our stomachs and knots, wondering what they'd do next. We stopped triple-checking the locks every night. The air in our home changed, lighter, real. The kids started laughing louder. Ava started drawing again. Josh joined soccer. Rachel's store grew faster than ever, even got written up in a local magazine. And through all of it, they stayed gone. Not because they chose to, because we didn't leave the door open anymore. I heard small things here and there. David tried pitching a consulting startup that tanked in 3 months. He blamed cancel culture. Celia moved to Arizona, apparently tried getting into some HOA board, and Dad voted out after one meeting. I couldn't help but smile when I heard that. As for my mother, someone forwarded me a photo of her sitting alone at a church-baked sale, surrounded by untouched casseroles and empty chairs. She was still talking, apparently, telling anyone who'd listen that her son betrayed the family, that we poisoned the children, that Rachel had manipulated me. No one was listening anymore, even the ones who used to defend her, the second cousins, the family friends who always played neutral. They stopped pretending. I ran into one of them at the grocery store. He just nodded and said, "You did the right thing." It was long overdue. And yet, Despite all that, the most important moment came from Ava. A few weeks ago, a school counselor called us in. Apparently, my mother had sent a letter to the school, handwritten, folded inside a birthday card. They flagged it and handed it over without opening it. Ava knew about it. The counselor asked if she wanted to see what it said. She shook her head. I don't need to read it. I already know who they are. Afterward, she asked me if we'd ever speak to them again. I told her the truth. No, not out of hate, not out of revenge, but because some people can't be fixed. Some people don't want peace. They want control. And when they can't get it, they burn everything down around them. We didn't escape them. We walked away knowing full well they chase us. And then we made sure they'd never be able to again. And the best part, we didn't become like them in the process. We didn't lie. We didn't cheat. We didn't scream or beg. We just told the truth loudly publicly. And when they couldn't twist it anymore, they vanished. Now our holidays are quiet, but full. Our kids grow without guilt. Rachel and I talk like we did when we first met, about books, trips we want to take, where to hang the new art Ava made. Sometimes I think about my father, what he'd say if he saw how far things went, what he'd think of me taking the company away from the woman he married. But then I remember the way he looked at me the day I left home. He didn't say it, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew. He saw who she really was long before I ever did. I think he'd be proud. I don't carry their names anymore. Not in my head. Not in my heart. Not in the stories I tell my kids. They are a chapter we closed and we're finally writing our own. It happened on a Tuesday. Ordinary weather, quiet morning. Rachel was sorting through the mail, bills, a catalog, 2 birthday party invitations for Josh, when she held something up and asked, "You recognize this handwriting?" I did. It was unmistakably my father's neat. All capital letters written like he measured each stroke, except my father had been dead for 11 years. The envelope was addressed to me. No return address, just my name. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded in thirds. No greeting, no date, just one sentence typed on an old machine. The ink slightly faded. If they ever tried to take more than they gave, remember who I left it to. That was it. I turned the envelope over again, searching for a clue. Nothing. No markings, no scent, no logo, but I knew his words. I knew his rhythm. I knew it was him. Rachel looked at me and asked, "Do you think he knew this would happen?" I didn't answer. That night, I pulled out the old lock box from the top of my closet. Inside were birth certificates, property deeds, business contracts. At the very bottom was a manila folder I hadn't touched since the funeral, the final copy of my father's will. I flipped to the last page, to the small note he had left handwritten in the margins. I'd skimmed over it years ago. This time I read it slowly. "John, if things ever get ugly, if they ever try to twist what we built, this will protect you. But only if you walk away when it's time." I'd walked away. And now I was wondering what exactly he meant by protect you. There was a number scribbled next to that note. An account number, not one I recognized, not tied to any bank I dealt with. I haven't told Rachel yet. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Maybe nothing. Or maybe the story isn't over. Not just yet.